Welcome to week 4. Now, if this were a Geico commercial, we'd make some reference to hump week instead of hump day, maybe bring in a few camels to talk. But this isn't a Geico commercial, it's just our class, so maybe we'll just call it midway week. Now, you may be asking yourself, what in the world does Geico and camels have to do with what we're going to discuss this week? I'm glad you asked. Think about those commercials. What is Geico communicating through those commercials? They're funny, a little bit edgy, memorable. How many times have you walked through your organization or through your community and heard somebody on Wednesday say, Mike, guess what day it is? That is an indelible impression that Geico has made on its potential customers. Now think about your own organization. How do you communicate? What messages do you send to help communicate your brand? Now, I come at this from a Navy perspective. I retired from the Navy, where part of my responsibility was helping to communicate the Navy brand. In 2007, 2008, the Navy changed its brand to America's Navy, a global force for good. We launched this in October of 2009. Many people liked it. There was much discussion about whether or not the brand should change. There were some who thought that the message global force for good sounded a little too soft for a military organization. Well, this went on for a number of years, and finally the Navy decided that they would change their brand to simply America's Navy. And then we would change theme lines or what have you, depending upon the commercial or communication that we were putting out. Anyway, I share that with you because it's one of those things that communicators struggle with in terms of how to communicate the brand. We knew, certainly Navy leaders knew, what America's Navy, a global force for good, meant. But communicating that was certainly a challenge, and it will continue to be. Even with America's Navy, what does that mean? Think about your own organization, and what does it mean to you personally, and how do you convey that meaning to your internal and external audiences? Now, some of the things we're going to explore this week as part of this branding notion is we're going to differentiate between marketing, integrated marketing communications, and some other approaches to strategic communication. We'll also touch on public relations again. You'll recall that we talked about that in an earlier week. We're also going to try to understand what is meant by a brand. Have you ever thought about what your organization's brand is? How do you communicate that brand? How does that communication influence your own marketing? And then finally, we'll identify ways in which social media have influenced marketing practices, especially within your own organization. Now, we'll discuss, as part of your discussion, you'll discuss brands within your organization. Don't worry if you don't have a specific brand in your organization, your current organization. You can pick a brand from a previous organization, or if you're really struggling with that, you can find any organization that you have served in or are familiar with, just so you get in the practice of reviewing this brand and using it as an opportunity to apply those learning principles that we'll go through this week. As you look at the brand within your organization or the organization you've selected, think about what values they reflect. Remember that Geico commercial that we started off with. What unique challenges are associated with the brand? I shared some as my example in the Navy. Reflect on the communication structures and the processes within your organization. How integrated are those processes and structures in terms of communication? And then how does this level of integration impact the strategic nature of marketing? Remember, this is all about strategic communication, not reactionary, not day-to-day tactical communication, but looking ahead with a sense of vision. What is the strategic communication? How is that strategic communication influenced by your brand? And as always, make sure that you apply the readings to your discussion post and your responses to fellow students. Now, one quote I want to share with you as part of this introduction for this week. Christensen, Torp, and Farrat in 2005 said, quote, "From a marketing perspective, one of the most important implications of post-modernity, easy for me to say, is the loss of control, consistency, and predictability." Again, the loss of control, consistency, and predictability. Now, as I read that, I was reminded of about 10 years ago when we started writing the social media roadmap, we called it, for the Navy. I had the privilege of serving as the head of a team where we wrote the standard operating procedures that would later turn into the policy for the Department of Defense in terms of the use of social media. And as I thought about this term, control, consistency, and predictability, it reminded me of a quote that I used to use when we would brief senior leaders about control. And I reminded the senior leaders, or at least I advised them, to eliminate the illusion of control. I'm not sure organizations really had complete control over their message. Once it's out in the marketplace, the market's going to do what it wants. It's either going to accept it, reject it, modify it, do something else with it, maybe even ignore it. The same is true now with social media. It's just now we have the opportunity as communicators to hear better than ever before what the market says about our brand, what the market says about the communication that we provide. Think about it. Within your organization, if you're active on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or any other number of social media platforms, hopefully you're listening to what your customers, both internal and external, are saying about your brand. And based upon that listening, you can change, modify, enhance, whatever you need to do to your communication. We've never had that ability as quickly as we do today. So I think social media is a great opportunity for communicators. It certainly presents challenges, just like any communication. But on the whole, I think it's a great opportunity for strategic communication to help us get ahead of potential issues, to help us better understand what people think about our brand. I want to hear what you have to say. That's it for now. Remember, stay ahead with all your assignments, stay engaged in the discussion post, and enjoy this time of learning.